the only unsolved case of air piracy in the history of commercial aviation.
It's Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. A man in a dark business suit walks into Portland International Airport, pays cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle, and takes his seat on Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305. He orders a bourbon and soda. He doesn't talk to anyone. He is completely unremarkable. Then, at 3:05 in the afternoon, he hands a flight attendant a note. The note says he has a bomb in his briefcase. He opens the case just enough for her to see inside, a mass of liars, red cylinders, a battery. Whether it was real, no one would ever know. What happened next would become the only unsolved case of air piracy in the entire history of commercial aviation. His name wasn't even D.B. Cooper. That was a mistake made by a reporter. The man on that plane gave the name Dan Cooper. We still don't know his real name. We never found him. And to this day, the FBI doesn't know if he lived or died.
Welcome to ExploricaGlobal, where we uncover the stories the world overlooked.
305 was carrying 36 passengers and 6 crew members. It was a short hop, Portland to Seattle, less than an hour in the air. The man calling himself Dan Cooper was calm. Witnesses described him as polite, almost formal. Mid-40s, dark sunglasses, a black J.C. clip-on tie. He wasn't nervous, he wasn't aggressive. He ordered another drink. After the flight attendant read his note, he pulled her close and told her what he wanted. $200,000 in $20 bills and 4 parachutes. The FBI was notified mid-flight. The pilot stalled, circling Seattle, while agents scrambled to gather the cash. The money was real, all of it, with serial numbers recorded by investigators. When the plane landed in Seattle, Cooper made good on part of his deal. He released all 36 passengers in exchange for the money and the parachutes. He kept the crew. Then he gave his next order. The plane was to fly south toward Mexico City at the lowest safe altitude, below 10,000 feet, with the landing gear down and the cabin unpressurized. He wanted the plane flying slow and low over dark wilderness. The pilot later said the flight conditions Cooper demanded were almost impossible to maintain. The aircraft was near its limits. Some investigators believe this means Cooper knew aviation. Others believe he got lucky. Somewhere over the forests of southwest Washington state, at approximately 8:13 in the evening, the rear staircase of the Boeing 727 opened. The crew felt a pressure change, a slight bump. When they turned around, Dan Cooper was gone. The FBI launched what they named Operation Norjack, Northwest Hijacking. Over the next 45 years, agents would interview over 1,000 suspects, track leads across the country, and analyze every piece of physical evidence left behind. That evidence was remarkably thin. Cooper had taken his ransom note back from the flight attendant. Smart. He left behind a few cigarette butts, a single hair on his headrest, and, most importantly, his black clip-on tie. That tie would become one of the most analyzed objects in FBI history. Recent FBI files released in 2025 revealed something extraordinary. The tie contained over 100,000 microscopic particles, including rare metals like bismuth and unalloyed titanium, metals that weren't commonly found outside highly specialized manufacturing environments. Some investigators believe this places Cooper inside a facility with connections to Boeing, the very company that built the plane he hijacked. Then there was the parachute. Cooper had asked for 4 parachutes, 2 main, 2 reserve. Here's what investigators found alarming in hindsight. One of the reserve parachutes given to him was a training dummy, The canopy had been sewn shut. It was completely non-functional. Cooper jumped with it anyway. Either he didn't check or he didn't care. Both possibilities tell us something about who he was. The search area was enormous, a 40-mile stretch of dense wilderness between Seattle and Reno, somewhere over the Cascade Mountain Range. Searchers on foot, helicopters, the Army, they found nothing. Then, in 1980, 9 years later, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging on the banks of the Columbia River when he pulled up something from the sand, a rotting bundle of $20 bills. The serial numbers matched exactly. It was $5,800 of Cooper's ransom money, about 3% of what he'd taken. The bills were decomposed, deteriorated, bound in decaying rubber bands. They had clearly been in water for years. The FBI searched the entire area. They found nothing else. In 2020, scientists conducted a new analysis of the diatoms, microscopic organisms found on the bills. Their conclusion was startling. The money hadn't entered the river in 1971. The diatom species present only bloomed in springtime, meaning the bills arrived in the water at least several months after the hijacking. Someone or something moved that money after the jump.
Over 45 years, the FBI processed more than 1,000 serious suspects. Most were eliminated quickly. A few haunted investigators for decades. Suspect 1, Richard Floyd McCoy. Just 5 months after Cooper's jump, a man named Richard Floyd McCoy hijacked a United Airlines flight in an eerily similar operation. Same demands, same method, same escape by parachute. McCoy was a decorated Vietnam veteran, Green Beret, expert skydiver. He was caught with the ransom money just days after his hijacking. His physical description, height, weight, age, hair color, matched witness accounts of Cooper almost perfectly. The FBI investigated him intensely and then eliminated him. 2 of the flight attendants who had spent hours with Cooper said McCoy's photos didn't match. His face was wrong. His mannerisms were different. McCoy was convicted for his own hijacking, escaped from federal prison 2 years later, and was killed in a shootout with FBI agents in 1974. He took whatever secrets he had with him. Suspect 2, Robert Rackstraw. Rackstraw was a con man, a forger, a paratrooper, and a thief. In the 1970s, he was linked to grand theft, $75,000 in bad checks, and the possible murder of his own stepfather. He faked his death in 1978 by logging a false Mayday call from a plane over California. In 2016, a team of investigators published a book identifying Rackstraw as Cooper based on 5 years of research. A 2018 investigation claimed coded messages in a letter matched 3 Army units Rackstraw served in. The FBI declined to reopen the case. Rackstraw denied everything until his death in 2019. His lawyer called the evidence the stupidest thing he'd ever heard. Suspect 3, the 2023 revelation. In 2023, something unexpected happened. The children of Richard McCoy, the suspect the FBI had eliminated decades earlier, came forward. After their mother passed away, Shantae and Rick McCoy approached an amateur investigator named Dan Grider with items they had found stored in a shed on the family's North Carolina property, a parachute rig and a logbook. Grider described the parachute as, quote, literally 1 in a billion, meaning it was an extremely rare configuration that matched what was given to Cooper on that flight. The logbook, according to McCoy's daughter, places their father at the site of the skyjacking. The FBI has not publicly commented.
The case officially remains closed. Closed, but not solved. And here is the question that has never been answered. If Richard McCoy was innocent, why did two of his children spend decades gathering evidence that suggests he wasn't? Did he survive? At 8:13 p.m. on November 24, 1971, it was pitch black over the forests of southwest Washington. The temperature was below freezing. Rain was hammering down from a storm front moving east. The wind speed at that altitude was over 200 miles per hour. Cooper jumped wearing a business suit, a thin overcoat, and dress loafers. He had $200,000 strapped to his body. He was using a parachute he could not steer, a military-style chute designed for free fall, not precision landing. He was jumping blind at night into one of the most unforgiving wilderness regions in America. The original FBI lead investigator, Ralph Himmelsbach, believed Cooper died in the jump. When asked how confident he was, Himmelsbach said he originally thought Cooper had a 50-50 chance. He later revised that estimate downward. But here's what we know he didn't do. He didn't die near where the money was found. The 1980 discovery on the Columbia riverbanks and the 2020 analysis placing the money in water several months after the jump tells us the Dills traveled. Either they washed downstream from somewhere upstream, meaning Cooper came down near the river, or someone picked them up, held them for months, and disposed of them. No bones were ever found, no parachute, no equipment, no clothing. In 50 years of wilderness hikes, logging operations, and aerial surveys of that corridor, nothing. Which means one of two things. Either D.B. Cooper's remains are somewhere in those forests, slowly becoming part of the earth, undiscovered, unreachable, and forever anonymous, or he walked out. Here is what I keep coming back to. In 1971, there were no surveillance cameras at that airport. No biometrics, no facial recognition, no digital records. A man paid cash for a ticket under a false name, hijacked a plane in front of dozens of witnesses, and disappeared into the American wilderness. And in 53 years, not a single person has definitively proven who he was. The FBI interviewed over 1,000 suspects. They had his DNA from his tie. They had his fingerprints from the can of bourbon he held for hours. They had eyewitness descriptions. They had the serial numbers from every bill he carried. And they found nothing. In 2026, new files were released, revealing yet another suspect, a former Boeing inspector, an aviation expert who was in Seattle around the time of the hijacking and left suddenly. His name was Raymond Sidney Russell. He matched the physical description, he had the aviation knowledge. The FBI eliminated him too. The truth is, D.B. Cooper might have been anyone, a frustrated veteran, a desperate father, a man who had simply decided that one afternoon in November was going to be the most extraordinary day of his life, whatever happened after. And if he survived, he lived out the rest of his days knowing something the entire FBI never figured out. He knew exactly who Dan Cooper really was.
Like and subscribe to ExploricaGlobal for more.